Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 23 of season 5 of My Hero Academia, Tenko Shimura Origin. Oh, Shigaraki. As a manga reader, this is the part of the manga, no spoilers, that I really got invested in Shigaraki's character. Because up until now, Shigaraki's been a good antagonist, a good villain. He's kind of a punk, kind of a brat. I mean, he's a kid, basically, and he's been molded slowly but surely by All for One. So he's been definitely an antagonist that you fear because of his ability, but personality-wise, it's like, I don't know if he measures up to like All for One or some of the other villains. So I will be very curious this episode to see what all we get from the manga, to see what all happens. But man, I love Toga and Twice in the League of Villains, and we got them upgraded last couple of episodes. So I can't believe we only have 3 episodes left. We have this episode and then 2 more. I obviously, from reading the manga, have an idea of where they're going to cut off at, but I'm not entirely sure. So that's kind of exciting to see what all we get in this episode, and then what all transfers over to the next episode and the one after that for the season finale. We'll see. But in any case, as per usual, I'll be watching the episode and then I'll stop my reaction, go read the manga and catch up where we're at, and then come back and do a non-spoiler discussion and a spoiler discussion. So I'm pretty excited. But yeah, let us dive in, shall we? I've waited all week for this. In the back of my head, I've been like, okay, episode 23 is happening. We're getting Shigaraki origin story. Let's do this. So I've been pretty excited for this episode, but let us do this, shall we? We are going to start episode 23 of My Hero Academia here in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Oh man, we ended this at a decent spot. This episode, gosh, reading the manga when this came out, oh buddy, I remember everybody was going crazy with Shigaraki's backstory because it is gruesome. It is gruesome. It is a lot, and it kind of is fitting for his character. But it's so interesting to me. I think that the most interesting part about Shigaraki, based on this backstory, are the parallels and contrasting elements with him and Deku. Because it's kind of funny. We've set Deku and Shigaraki up to be villains and heroes, against each other this whole series so far, but it doesn't really hit you how similar they truly are until we get to this. And I'm going to save some of it for the spoiler discussion, but the parts I can talk about here, non-spoilery, is it's funny because seeing Shigaraki's backstory and seeing him as a 5-year-old child, he looks a lot like Deku. He has the crazy hair, he has the big eyes, like the way that they're drawn, especially in the manga too, is very similar. They're very similar characters, and I think that's intentional on Horikoshi's part to talk about these two characters and how similar they were. They both started out without quirks. Their parents were both worried about that and decided... The thing is, the family life is really what separates them. The environment that these two grew up in makes all the difference, right? Well, that and Shigaraki's quirk. But here's the thing, and the thing that really stands out for me is that Deku is shown with just his mom. They live in like a modest little apartment. There's not a lot there. It's not extravagant. His mom is clearly working at home. His dad is away abroad making money for them, but we never see him. So the father's not present. It's just Deku and his mom, and they're living this meager, humble little life in this little apartment, and everything's fine. But that's the thing. They're still happy with one another, and even though Deku doesn't have a quirk, his mother Inko shows this unconditional love for him and helps raise him in a kind, warm environment. And that makes all the difference. Like, she encourages Deku, like, be a hero. You can be a hero in your own way. And she, like, encourages him. And even though he's sad that he doesn't have a quirk and he doesn't think he'll ever become a hero, she's like, it's okay that you don't have a quirk. Like, you can still be this great person. And I think that makes all the difference for Deku's, like, conditioning growing up and why he acts the way that he does around Bakugo and around other characters. And so then when he meets All Might and he's given this chance to be a hero, it's so impacting because you're like, oh, Deku's become this great person despite knowing that he's not going to have a quirk. And then that's why he gets rewarded kind of with the quirk from All Might. You contrast that with Shigaraki's backstory. His father created this beautiful home. Like, he made all this money. He became a salaryman, was a wealthy man. He made this beautiful home that basically him and his grandparents could live in. The whole family's all together. Shigaraki has a big family. He has his mom, his grandparents, his sister, his dad. They're all in this house, and they have money, and it should be a very comfortable life. But because Shigaraki can't pursue, because his dreams of being a hero are constantly dashed by his father is so consumed with being left behind by Nana, it skewed his entire perception of heroes. He's just projecting that frustration and anger onto his kid, and it's making their home life miserable. Like, the line that always gets me from the manga and from the anime is, "My father built this home that kindly rejected me." That line always gets me. It's like he built this beautiful home for them, and it was like a prison. It was like he wasn't welcome here. And he tells the mom, he's like, "I only itch when I'm here," because it's his hatred. It's his rage. It's this 5-year-old kid that's so frustrated and angry with how life is for him at that young age. And it's all because of his dad. And that's the sad part, is Kotaro, who's Nana's son, he just couldn't understand why she left him. And it's so frustrating for us as the audience, because we know why she left him. We know because she knew that he was going to get targeted because she was a hero, and because she had One for All's ability. And if All for One found out, he would target her son along with her. And she's like, "I can't bear the thought of my son being in danger." So she left him to go be a hero. And she did it. I mean, it was a selfless act on her part, because she's like, "I'm sacrificing my only child so that he can be safe." But the sad tragedy of it is that Kotaro takes it the wrong way. He thinks that she just abandoned him. And it's like, dude, you ended up having a great life. You were wealthy. You made money. You married this beautiful woman who's kind and has a family. You had a son and a daughter. Like, you had it all. And he just couldn't let go of the past. And he couldn't get over the fact that his mother left him. And all of that, like, rejection and negative emotion, he just put on his family. And it's so tragic. It's such a tragedy. It's like, if he had just taken the situation differently, things might have been totally different. But they weren't. And the sad thing is that it all played into All for One's hands. It's like Nana's efforts overall were in vain, because her trying to protect her family, it ended up killing them anyway. It's such a tragedy. It's like, damn. But we'll talk more about that in the spoiler discussion. So I do want to point out something. This isn't a spoiler because we've seen the episode now. But in the manga, I noticed this rereading that it's not really a spoiler, so I can show it. But there's this panel here of when Twice is making the measurements for Toga. And they add the line in here, "I forgot you're at the prime growth spurt age in the middle of puberty." And that's why they're measuring her again. It's almost like the studio wanted to, like, retcon and be like, "Wait, did we measure her previously? Why are we measuring her again?" It's almost like they were trying to retcon Horikoshi. But in the manga, they don't even mention the puberty thing. He's like, "We just got to make a double." So I don't know if that's them just trying to, like, connect everything fine. But what I like about this scene is that Twice is even though he's a villain, he's such a gentleman. He's like, "I just needed to measure her to save her life." Like, there wasn't any other ulterior motive. He's just like, "We have to do it so that we can help save her." And I'm like, I love that. I love that Twice is such a kind person despite being a villain. He's like, "I just wanted to save her and keep her safe." So I'm like, I love that scene. It's very, very good. And then Spinner. I feel so bad for Spinner in this. I like that Spinner, and people in Crunchyroll in the comments have noted this, Spinner has the most traditional villain backstory. He was just a normal person that was rejected and bullied by society. So he joined a terrorist organization that accepted him. That's like the most realistic villain backstory in true life as it gets. Is that society rejected him, so he found a place that didn't. And it just happened to be the League of Villains. It's like, that's the most generic but relatable backstory, because Spinner, I mean, his quirk is kind of like Suyu's, where she has all the frog abilities. Spinner's kind of the same way. He has all the gecko abilities. And I think it's ironic and funny that the fandom, a lot of reactors that I've watched that watch My Hero Academia, a lot of the reactors, like, they just give Spinner a lot of grief. And I'm like, but Spinner's the same as Suyu, so you're not giving Suyu grief, so why are you giving Spinner grief? Like, they both have animalistic powers, And I think it's also interesting that Tsuyu isn't ridiculed like Spinner is. Tsuyu's whole family look like frogs, but society doesn't reject her because she just looks human enough, right? Human enough, right? But Spinner, because he looks more like a gecko, is ridiculed, and it's all based on his looks, nothing else. And it's so sad, but it's so true to life, right? That even though he's like a normal person, he gets ridiculed based on his looks alone. It's like, I honestly have a lot of respect for Spinner. I know he doesn't play a big part in the story because his power isn't like something crazy like Shigaraki's or Twice's, but he's like an essential member of the group, and I think his perspective is really important to the League because it adds kind of that levity. He like has the most normal person perspective going into this. He's not a crazy person. He's not clinically insane or has a disorder, a mental disorder or anything like that. He's just a normal guy that is in the League of Villains because they accept him. So it's like, okay. I forgot what the quirk of the guy, the politicians was. And it's like, oh yeah. I think I commented in the last episode that his ability is to raise the power of those that he speaks to. And yeah, I like the quirk in sight. I like that his name is Trumpet. And that it's the idea that he has electromagnetic waves that boost the morale. It's kind of like President Mike's quirk in a little ways. Only President Mike causes damage with the sound waves, and here it like boosts people's it like gives them an adrenaline high. It kind of works like the quirk enhancing drugs that people use. Only it's like audio. It's kind of cool. I like it. I actually like his quirk a lot. It's just a shame that he's like a generic run of the mill villain where he's like just all talk and Spinner's like, I don't have time for this. I love Spinner's whole agenda this episode is just, I don't have time for this. Why me? I just want to help Shigaraki and do my part with the League and do the best that I can. And he's like, why y'all hating on me? I love it. But okay. Getting back to Shigaraki. Oh my gosh. I want to talk in the spoiler discussion, obviously, but I love Verdestro's quirk. It's so great. If I had a quirk, I think I would probably have Verdestro's quirk, or I'd want Verdestro's quirk because I have a lot of stress from work. And I always get like stress headaches and like get a lot of tension in my shoulders. Like if you see me doing this a lot, it's just like tension. I should probably see a chiropractor. But I feel like I get a lot of stress from work, and being able to convert that into power would be really cool. So I would actually like Verdestro's quirk. I think that'd be a cool ability to have. And it would be something simple because we always get stressed. Humans always get stressed under various circumstances. So I would be like, yeah, let me convert this into an ability. Sure. The only thing is I have to get new clothes because he like tore up his suit with this. I love it's 80% liberation. It's like as he gets more and more stressed. And he basically acknowledges why he has a widow's peak. He's like, I've had all this stress and I've lost my hair. It's like, oh, clever. This episode's pretty brutal and a little bit more gruesome. I'm surprised the censorship, especially when we got to the backstory. I was afraid. I was like, man, are they going to censor this? Or are they going to show it kind of like the manga? And they kind of do both. And I'm like, ooh. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about it in the spoiler corner. I do think the animation was off. I'm a little disappointed. I'll talk more about it in the spoiler corner because I'll have some images from the manga. But there were some shots in this episode that I was like, that face looks weird, or that animation's odd or awkward. And I'm a little disappointed from that. I still hope that they save some of it. I'm like, their budget. I'm like, where? I don't know. I'm being nitpicky. But the manga is so gorgeous that I was really hoping it would amp up the animation for this episode. And it's fine. It's just, if you've read the manga, then you're kind of like, man, what could be and what is. The revelation, I don't know if any anime-only people will have the revelation of that being the family's hands. And I think that part of the episode really got me in the moment. It really got me was that first reading the manga and then watching this, that the whole time, these preserved hands have been his family, his literal family all around him. Because I think when I first saw Shigaraki, I was like, oh, these hands, are they from people that he's killed? Yes. Did I think it was all of his family members? And I think it's so interesting that the hand on his head, this hand is his father's. We'll talk about that in spoiler discussion. But I think that that's so intriguing that the hand that's on his face is his father's, especially in this episode when he goes to kill his father, he puts his hand on his father's face. So that just that parallel, that reversal, it's good stuff, Horikoshi. It's good stuff. And of course, we have old All For One here with his white hair because All For One's pretty old. He's pretty old because we established earlier this season that he and his brother have been around for a while, and so he's got the white hair. And of course, we don't see his face. Of course, we don't. Horikoshi doesn't want to show us that. But they make poor Shigaraki have little gloves on so he doesn't decay. I'm like, wouldn't they decay the gloves? It's not a problem. I guess it's also so he doesn't itch his face too. But yeah, heal with time. But yeah, All For One, he knows exactly what he's doing, telling him to heal with time and carry them next to your skin so that you can keep these feelings from fading away. He's like, it's like when Shigaraki talks about feeling sick but also feeling calm, it's like that bloodlust at the very end of the episode when he finally felt it killing his father, and he said he didn't itch anymore after having that. It's like, and we get the scar on his lip is from his father hitting him with the rake, with the garden, with the shears, the trimming shears. Yup. And his hair got going all Marie Antoinette and turning white, and his eyes changing color. It's crazy, right? It's crazy, and it makes a lot of sense why the other heroes and stuff wouldn't recognize him, or why Nana wouldn't recognize him if she had been alive, because he doesn't really look like that anymore. But he has the beauty mark. He has Nana's beauty mark. It's like that symbol that yeah, you can say all you want that you're not related, but that beauty mark is still there, that he looks like her. It's like, man. But yeah, the idea of keeping the hands on him so that they always keep him in check. And I feel so bad, like his sister looking like Nana and her name being Hannah. It's like even though the dad wants to distance himself from his mother, he still gives his daughter the name Hannah, which is just a rhyming name from his mother and everything. And then Shigaraki's real name being Tenko. And the idea that the sister always grabbed him by the hand to lead him around, and she was the only one that reached out. But his mother was so kind. Like, that's the thing that kills me, is that the mom was so nice to him and she loved her son. And even the part that always gets me is, well, the dog. I have corgis, and the dog dying, that breaks my heart every time. But the idea of the mom, as she's disintegrating and dying, reaching out to her son, like trying to grab him and hug him despite everything, it's awful. It's awful. And all this stuff happened when Shigaraki was 5 years old. So all this trauma that he's been carrying around with him since he was 5 years old, like it's developed with him and it's kept with him. But he's viewing this entire situation from the mindset of a 5-year-old. And how he remembers it is from the mindset of a 5-year-old. And yeah, I don't think Shigaraki's in the wrong. His father did everything possibly wrong. Like, the way he handled everything was not the right way at all. Like, he should have sat Shigaraki down and told him about his grandmother and about her being a hero and said, if you don't develop a quirk, it's okay. You can still be a hero in other ways. Like, when it's so sad because Tenko, when he's saying that he was like playing heroes with his friends and he was being All Might, it's like the irony, all of it. And I'm like, if Kotaro had just sat down with his son and had a conversation with him and told him about his grandmother and let them have this discussion of heroes and just put aside his own anger and his own hatred of his mother, if he had just done that for his son, I think a lot of this could have been avoided. I really do. Or when he developed that quirk, they could have handled it without it being just a massacre. But that's not what happened. Horikoshi's like, that's not how the story goes. And I think that it's interesting to note that Shigaraki's power, even though he loses 3 fingers, he can still disintegrate things with just the 2. And so Redestro's like, oh, was I wrong? I really thought that he could only do this with 2 fingers. So what the heck? But, And as we've seen from the flashback, Shigaraki's ability to destroy in mass quantity is something that's always been in him. And him just scratching as his head's splitting open. I do love that as Redestro, he's like, they had this conversation. Redestro's like, yeah, you can, powers change and grow, and you're in the process of evolving in this moment, just like Toga and Twice, right? And even Getten, I like that he acknowledges that it's not just a League of Villains thing. Getten's power kind of awoken too in that process whenever someone was in trouble. But damn, that idea of, I like Redestro saying, you cannot have destruction without creation. If there's no creation, there's no future. And that ties directly to Redestro's whole thing, because Redestro's like, I'm the son of Destro. If my parents hadn't created me, there would be no future for the Meta Liberation Army. So it's like his whole philosophy is based upon his past, just like Shigaraki's philosophy is based upon his past. So they're two very different backstories, right? And they're at odds with one another, but they're both true to those characters. And I just love that Redestro holds the tiny phone up next to him, and then it's Skeptic being like, Gigantomachia is here. They had a trump card. It's gonna wreck shit. We got problems. It's like, oh, I love it. I love it so much. But that shot of Shigaraki walking up and having the shoes are gone, his feet are just bloody, and his clothes are like in tatters. That whole thing, and him holding his father's hand in his, and the gleam in his eyes. He's like, you were right. I just want to destroy. And he has that gleam in his eye. It's like, and the blood coming down. And Redestro's like, well, then you're the antithesis of my whole existence, so I want you to be destroyed. And then Shigaraki's like, I don't need a future. And that's the thing. Redestro's like, you can't, without creation, there's no future. Redestro wants to have the Meta Liberation go on. He wants to create this legacy and move forward and have all these things happen in the future. Shigaraki doesn't care about the future. He doesn't care, because in his world, he's not loved by anybody. So there's nothing for him to fight for. He's like, heroes have something they fight for, their family or their friends or the people and the communities they are in. For Shigaraki, he has none of that. I mean, the League is his family, but are they really a family, or do they just follow him? And so for Shigaraki, he doesn't really view that as anything like what a hero would fight for. So he's like, I don't have to have a future, because there's nothing for me. And it's so sad. It's so sad. But man, that flashback. And Kotaro and all of that. And the mom buying all the prescriptions to help him like with the itching. And it's not helping. And just, damn. And the thing of it is, Kotaro wants to forget the past and keep it from his children, but yet he keeps the letters and he keeps the photo. So he doesn't want to let go of Nana. He doesn't really want to let go of her. He's just upset because she never came back and she wasn't a part of his life. And there's that little blur on the page. You can tell that it's a teardrop. Like either she's been crying or he's been crying reading it. And he says, he's like, I wish you had hated me. Because then for Kotaro, if she had hated him and just abandoned him, he could let her go, right? But because she said, I love you, and she was so kind in that letter and explaining why she had to do that, it's like he still is so frustrated and angry at her, but he can't quite hate her, right? Because he knows that she loves him. And it's like, but he still made all the wrong decisions. Like, Kotaro, you did all the things wrong, and it all accumulated into this, right? I still can't get over that corgi dying. Nope, it's awful. And they had to do it. They just had to show him as a bloody pile of chunks. And then the sister dying, the grandparents. And on the one hand, yeah, the dad acts horribly wrong. The dad does everything wrong. Where he tries to hit his son with the pruning shears. And the sad part is, she's like, I hope your life's full of smiles. And we juxtapose that with the side of his entire life crumbling. And then, yeah, he hits Tenko almost like as a reflex. And that's what the cut across his face is. And he tells him to stop. And then, yeah. And at the time, I had a clear intent to kill. And he puts his hand on the dad. And then and that shot, an absurd sense of pleasure. That animation is just like in the manga. Oh, it is gruesome. And then, yeah, the bloody hand, he's like, and the itch was gone. Ah! Oh, this episode. Oh, I still have some spoilery stuff I want to talk about, but damn. Yep. It's like time to go into the last 2 episodes. So, if you're not sticking around for the spoiler corner, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'll be back next week with episode 24 of season 5 of My Hero Academia. But if you're sticking around for spoilers, I'm glad we finally had this episode out in the open. I've been waiting for this since season 5 started. This is honestly what I've been waiting for, is Shigaraki's backstory. I've been waiting for it, and I'm happy with it. I'm glad they went a little bit gorier than I thought. I thought it was just gonna be they were gonna turn to dust and they were gonna show everything bloody, but you have to show how bloody this is because it's that important to Shigaraki's backstory. There's a couple little nitpicks. This set of chapters was chapters 233 through 236, so 4 chapters, which is fine. I'm a little curious how they're going to do the last 2 episodes because we're going to be on chapter 237 next. And back in episode 12, we ended with chapter 242. So there's really only like 9 chapters left to adapt for the last 2 episodes. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. I'm really curious. If they did 4 chapters next week, then we'd only be left for like 2 chapters for episode 25. So I am curious. Very curious how they're going to handle it. If they're going to even go into the war arc and start it. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Next episode, I'm pretty sure they're going to get to where Redestro gives him the army, but I'm like, where do we go to from there? So I'm really curious what's going to end up happening. So I did want to make note. I talked about it in the non-spoiler discussion that Twice didn't make the whole puberty thing. He does do the Dobby plastic surgeon joke, which is still hilarious to me. I'm still like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's great. There are a couple things too I did want to notice. One, Skeptic. There is a little tiny scene. It's just this 1 page, but Skeptic is still in the manga at this point on a rampage because the boss, Redestro, said that Skeptic failed. And Skeptic is not one that handles failure at all. He's like, I do my job. I do it right. It's a success. So him just like going through the motions of grabbing and touching all the Twice replicas and making them his own puppets is very cool. I like it. I like it a lot. But yeah, his whole thing, I didn't fail. And being like, did you hear me? Bubai Gawara, you scum. I didn't fail. It's like, I love it. I love that Skeptic is a fun character. I like him later on when he's helping with the Dobby reveal. Like, that's such a great moment where he's like, what would you do without my editing skills? It's like, I love the idea of a tech guy in this world as a villain, like an IT guy that has a really cool quirk. I think it's fun. I like Skeptic a lot. But yeah, Skinner's stuff is great. I hope that more anime-only people appreciate him because I do respect Spinner a lot. Not Skinner. Spinner a lot. But like I said in the non-spoiler discussion, I'm a little conflicted because I really thought they would save a lot of their budget for these last couple episodes. And it's fine. It's normal. It's just kind of like there were some wonky animation moments, and I'll talk about those in a minute. I did want to note, I am kind of sad, and I get for the censors they weren't going to do this, but Shigaraki, I want to show you this panel, his whole hand just goes. It's like, other than the last 2 fingers, Redestro just takes the whole hand off. And it's like, he's like, you killed many of my warriors on your way here, didn't you? And he's like, He's like, and this was the hand that committed such evil acts. And he just knocks off the fingers, thinking that that's going to stop him from being able to decay with that hand. So it's a little bit more gruesome, in the manga for sure. But yeah, I also love that when he was talking about like, let's not judge people by their quirks. And he's like, yeah, I know that lesson. I was raised on it too. We get this really cute little panel at the top. And it's of like all these like anthropomorphic people, and then there's one with like the devil horns, and he's putting a bandage on the little girl's knee, and he has like the sweat bars. It's like, let's not judge people by their quirks. And it says an excerpt from Quirks and Us, a children's book by Shueisha. It's like a pun on Shueisha. It's like, oh my god, I can't, Horikoshi, I can't. But I just love it. I love the idea that we were teaching kids how to like accept people for their quirks and not judge them by them, which is hilarious juxtaposed with they're judging Spinner by his quirk. So it's like all these good intentions with this society built up. But I think this whole episode is one of the themes of it is good intentions that don't measure up. The good intentions of that show, and you juxtapose it with Spinner not being accepted. The good intentions of Nana for leaving Kotaru behind so they wouldn't get killed, and the ramifications of that. Like all these good intentions, no good deed goes unpunished, right? Very, very, very true. But yeah, it's such a good moment in this manga. Now, I said that with the animation. Some of the animation was wonky. I did want to point out that at this point, Horikoshi does like show Shigaraki bouncing around, and it looks like Soul Eater, where his face is just like so like warped and twisted. It looks a lot like Soul Eater. He's like, this young man is in the process of an awakening. And there's no little to no wind up as with a lithe and as lithe as a cat. So yeah, so the animation, the illustrations that Horikoshi does are a little wonky, but in the show itself, I was like, there's some moments I was like, you could have spent a little more time with that maybe. But I do like the gleam in his eyes when he's like, I only exist to destroy. It's like, And I do want to note, this is one of my favorite screenshots from the chapters from this episode. That shot of Gigantomachia crashing through the city and causing all the debris and Skeptic being like, and then juxtaposing that with Shigaraki in his tattered robes with the hands like starting to come off of him and his eyes looking so worn. I love that shot. It's so good. I love Horikoshi. Horikoshi is such a good illustrator. He's such a good mangaka in terms of drawing these scenes and making them look so damn epic, like the use of shadows and the line art. It's good stuff. I also really like, speaking of which, this is one of my favorite color spreads. This is a color spread for, I think, chapter 235, Tenko's origin story. This color spread, I love it. I love I was an art minor, so I love the use of color in the blue and the blues and the oranges because they're like complementary colors. I love it. I love the idea of the blue buildings and everybody's dressed in different shades of orange. I love All Might getting the special line art. It was the 5th anniversary of My Hero Academia when this chapter came out, which is funny. Tenko Shimura, age 5, 5th anniversary of My Hero, and then it's, chapter 235. So it's lots of numerology things there. But I love all the contrast there. I guess Mina's the only one that's not really an orange. She's like in a shade of pink. But I love it. I love Invisible Girl. I love all the things. Hawks is in the distance there. You can see Hawks. And in the background, you can see Mirko and Endeavor up on the roof above him. It's good stuff. It's a lot of fun. I love it. And then I'm trying to think if there's any others in the background. You can see like Mirio, and you can see, look, Aizawa and President Mike together. And then there's Shoji and Sato. It's good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, I just, and the artwork here, I did like in the anime where they showed the gleam in Shigaraki's eyes when he says, all I can do is destroy. And this is the manga equivalent of that. And it's very stylistic. I do love how Horikoshi has him holding his father's hand, like in front of him. It's such a cool visual, and it's a cool symbolic gesture that all I can do is destroy, and it's touching back like on him killing his father. It's good stuff. But yeah, I'll show y'all so you can all feel my pain. The moment that Moan dies, the corgi. Oh, and again, he looks like Shigaraki looks so innocent and young, and like Deku there. And then seeing that dog die, that part got me in the manga because I'm like a big dog lover. And I was like, Horikoshi, how dare you? How dare you give him a corgi and then kill him? And then, yeah, just like in the episode, the mom's reaching for him, trying to hug him, and she just disintegrates into a bunch of bloody pieces. It's so cruel. And I don't think in that moment, like Shigaraki says that he hated his family and none of them reached out and helped him. But I don't think he hated Nana. I don't think he hated Hannah and his mother so much. The grandparents, he was always mad with them because they didn't stand up for him. And then he hated his father, which his father, Kotaro, you did so much wrong. And this is why I wanted to comment in the spoiler section. My big theory, and we'll touch on this in later seasons, my big theory is I think Gran Torino is Shigaraki's grandfather. I think that Gran Torino is Kotaru's father. And I think that because in the manga, when you go back and read further, you see Nana, and when Nana drops off Kotaro and leaves him at the shelter to abandon him, she like goes back to the rooftop, and Gran Torino, who's younger than, is like embracing her and comforting her. It's one of my favorite panels that Horikoshi has done. Horikoshi doesn't do a lot of romance in this series because it's a shonen action series, but there's a shot where she's like being embraced by Gran Torino. Nana is being embraced by Gran Torino. Sorihiko is his name, and she's being embraced by him, and the younger version of him has the little hair wisp that Kotaro does. Like, Kotaro has a little hair wisp that you can see in this shot here that's just dangling there. Sorihiko, Gran Torino, has the same thing in his hair, and his features when he's younger kind of look like Kotaru's. So my crack theory is that Kotaro is the son of Nana and Gran Torino, that they had a thing, and that they were not just friends, they were lovers. And that when she died, Gran Torino agreed to help train All Might because she was like a son to him. And yeah, because then later on in the manga, when Shigaraki is like hitting Gran Torino, it's like, yeah, because Shigaraki doesn't have his ability, but he still hits Gran Torino. It's like, yeah, it's like you're hitting your grandfather and the family all over again. That's my crackpot theory, and I'm sticking to it until Horikoshi tells me otherwise. Kotaro is the son of Gran Torino and Nana, and that just makes it even sadder, right? And then this panel at the end, they did adapt that really well in the anime. The part where he's like, it filled me with pure, maddening ecstasy somewhere deep in my heart. I must have been yearning for that all along. And just like that, the itch was gone. So the question is, of course, how much of this did All for One have an involvement in? Because there's a lot of people that have theorized that All for One, that Shigaraki's mutated quirk was manifested and orchestrated by All for One. There's a big theory about that. And a part of me is like, yeah, I kind of think All for One had something to do with it. Like, he figured out who Kotaro was, and he figured out and maybe manipulated Shigaraki a little bit. Like, part of me thinks that because All for One's like an Eisen-like style planner where he plans big brain ahead, and he wanted Shigaraki to be like his successor. Because at the end of the day, All for One is petty, and he's like, I'm doing all this just to spite Nana and to spite All Might. Like, just to spite you all, I'm going to take Nana's grandson and make him into my successor. Just to spite you all. Now, there's a lot of Dad for One theories out there that think that All for One is Deku's father. Here's the thing. I know I've talked about this in previous reactions. I don't think All for One is Deku's father, because that would insinuate that he got with Inko, and that's weird. But I do think that All for One is Deku's like great-great-grandfather or descendant. I think that either Inko or Deku's father are a descendant of All for One. Because at the end of the day, like, Horikoshi's really big into like Star Wars, and Star Wars is all about family lineages and things like that. And so I think, and there's a lot of like Vader symbolism with All for One. I think that I think Horikoshi is planning this big, because Deku and Shigaraki have a lot of similarities in their looks and their backstories, only they're like direct converses of each other. I think that it's Horikoshi doing this giant poetic thing where Nana, All for One, or One for All's descendant, biological descendant, is Shigaraki, who's the villain, the ultimate villain of the series. And then All for One's descendant is Deku, who's the ultimate hero of the series. And so it's like pitting these two brothers and their descendants against each other, like in this big grand battle. That's my theory, but I could definitely be proven wrong. It may be that Deku is not related to All for One at all, but I think he is. So I don't know. I guess it'll be fun to discuss this more as we get down the line into the actual episodes with the war arc, because when all this stuff starts to come to light, I really want to talk about this, not in the spoiler corner, but It's fun stuff. So yeah, this episode, man, and just it's so sad because on the one hand you kind of understand where Shigaraki's coming from because of his past, but then the idea of him just endlessly wanting to destroy here, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, I'm sure, but the idea that if somebody had just reached out to him, if a hero had been there for Shigaraki before All for One, it would have been a lot different. But here we are. I do want to say the voice acting for Shigaraki, that voice actor, he plays Tsukishima on Haikyuu. He plays, he's a villain in Demon Slayer. He's the main spider guy in Demon Slayer. He plays, oh my gosh, what other characters does he play? I always think of Tsukishima. That's like the first thing I think of is Tsukishima from Haikyuu. But he plays a lot of different characters. He's a really good voice actor. His voice acting in this episode, and the voice acting of young Shigaraki was really good too. His voice was recognizable, so I'm sure y'all will comment who young Shigaraki is. Their voice was very familiar too. But the voice acting of those two, of Shigaraki in this episode, top notch. I loved it. So yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm really excited for the last 2 episodes. I can't believe we're already at the end of season 5. I feel like this summer we just started, but here we are. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. As always, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back soon with more My Hero Academia. Bye.